My name is Carrie-Ann Lightley. I'm 35 years old and I have cerebral palsy. And my healthcare experience has been pretty typical for people of my age who have CP. When I was a child, I had a huge amount of medical intervention, lots of surgery, lots of support from people like physio and occupational therapists. And then when I reached age 16, all of that support disappeared. And along with that sort of disappearance of support came from me personally, a disconnect with my own health. I began to just simply ignore pains and twinges and really to deny that my own needs were any different from anybody else's. And I think that that was really my way of coping with that loss and that lack of support. It led me to coping mechanisms such as overworking, constantly being productive, anything really to kind of disconnect and dissociate myself from my own body. And all of this, of course, was unconscious and unknown at the time. But I rubbed along pretty well in that way until a few years ago, until a pandemic came along, forced me to slow down, to stop. And then a lot of those sort of buried thoughts and feelings started coming out and showing themselves in my body. I started having more health issues, more injuries, more pain related to my CP. And it really just led to feelings of fear, of anxiety, of fear of the unknown, fear of the future, and what that might mean, the potential of losing independence, the potential of having to be more reliant on the people around me to stay independent. It was a really difficult time. And it was the first time that in my adult life, that I'd been forced to confront the fact that my body wasn't always going to stay the same, that cerebral palsy was and is a lifelong condition, and that there were going to be changes that I wasn't expecting. And I was signposted by a friend at that point to the work of Adult Cerebral Palsy Hub, and instantly imbibed as much information as I possibly could, all of the research information that they collated, the excellently helpful NICE guidelines for adults with cerebral palsy, various podcast episodes, as much information as I could really find, to try and arm myself in what I felt was going to be a real battle to try and access some more healthcare support and almost get back into the system. Reaching out to my GP initially wasn't particularly helpful. They were empathetic and understood what I needed, but I was told that the care pathways just didn't exist, that the services weren't there to support me, and that supporting an adult with cerebral palsy was outside of the remit of the existing services. So I took it upon myself at that point to do some work, to do some research, to really just try and find somebody who could help me, support me, listen to me, and alleviate my fears. I spent a lot of time researching different specialists on the internet, reached out to my own neurologist, who actually said, you know, of course I'll see you, I'd be delighted to see you. But there was really that gatekeep with those care pathways that meant that my GP couldn't access that same conversation. And, you know, I have, through a huge amount of work, been able to assemble a multidisciplinary team who support me today. But that's really been sort of in through the back door, or trying to make myself fit into other services that weren't meant for me, that weren't meant for adults with cerebral palsy. So my neurologist sees me at a neuro rehab clinic that's more designed for people with acquired brain injuries or who've had strokes. My occupational therapist I got access to via an application for a disabled facilities grant to adapt my home. There was no other pathway for me to access occupational therapy. And my physio has a stroke rehab background, which in itself is helpful, but it's not the specialism in cerebral palsy. It's not the detailed background, knowledge and experience that I need for somebody to be an expert in me and my health. And I have, with the support of my GP, managed to access a really helpful and useful medication regime, but that's taken a huge amount of trial and error. And it's really required me to have my own freedom to explore different medications, to explore different dosage, to find the best fit for me. And that's required, a really trusting relationship between my GP and myself, a recognition from my GP that I am the expert in my own body, that I am the expert in my own impairment and condition, and that that trial and error is a necessary process for me to get to a place of good management. And I can't talk about good management without talking about the misdiagnoses that I've had along the way. I was recently diagnosed with IBS, and prior to that, having experienced various symptoms for probably about 15 years, I was told that what I was experiencing was general anxiety, was panic disorder. And that just hugely changed the way that I felt about myself when I discovered that actually these physical symptoms weren't the result of my brain panicking necessarily, but were the result of other internal systems not necessarily working as they should. It allowed me to be kinder to myself. It allowed me to have more confidence in the functioning of my body and to trust and be able to listen to my body. But I've only been able to do that because of the network that Adult CP Hub have brought together. So, only by discussing with other people who have CP, the various symptoms and things that I was experiencing, was I able to understand that IBS is a huge commonality in adults with cerebral palsy. That there are medications and routines and different things that I can do to support that and to manage it well, and to live a life where I'm not scared of what's going to happen to my body. I'm almost in control. I'm managing it myself. And as I say, I was only able to come to that place of confidence through seeing other people who look like me, through seeing other people who'd had the similar experiences to me, so that I could understand that things like IBS or startle reflex, they're not a me problem. They're not a problem that I need to take on as part of my personality or as some kind of deficit. They're a cerebral palsy problem. And that to me brings freedom and empowerment, because I can say I understand why I am the way that I am. And I'm beginning to understand how to manage that really well. It's only through true connection and information that the work of Adult Cerebral Palsy Hub has really changed my life. I've learned so much about myself, my condition, my impairment, and knowledge is empowering. Knowledge takes away the fear of the future, the fear of the unknown, and helps me to be an expert in myself. And connection with others helps me to make sense of who I am, of why I am the way I am, and of where I fit in the community of adults with cerebral palsy. There is still so much unknown. There's still so much that we don't know about CP in adulthood. And we deserve to know. We deserve to have access to experts who know, who can confidently tell us why our bodies are behaving the way that they are, and perhaps what to expect in the future, so that we can all have a future that we can confidently look forward to.